A warm welcome again, children, back again to the class of biology. And we will today talk about pteridophytes, right? In the previous class, we had discussed bryophytes, in which we said that bryophytes are the amphibians of the plant kingdom, right? And why are they amphibians of the plant kingdom? Because they require water also to complete a part of the life cycle. Right. So, they are found in damp and places which are damp, right? Because they require water. All right. So we begin with the next seedless group of plants, which are the pteridophytes, right? So the pteridophytes are the first terrestrial plants. Terrestrial plants found on land, right? So they are the first terrestrial plants. First terrestrial plants, right? So the plants found on land, right? Then again, another characteristic feature here is that since they are found on land, so they require certain structures which would help them in conduction, right? So that means that there they have the vascular bundles present, right? So they possess vascular tissues, right? So they possess vascular tissues, right? So what are the vascular tissues? They have xylem, which helps in the conduction of water, and they have phloem, which helps in the conduction of food, right? So these are the vascular tissues that are present, right? So the true vessels, of course, are absent in xylem, and companion cells are missing in phloem, but then tissues for conduction, that are the vascular tissues, they are present. Now these vascular tissues are not found in bryophytes. Why? Because they are already found in watery area, right? Where there's enough of water, right? So they don't require as such any specific tissues to help take in water, right? But these are the first terrestrial plants totally found on land, right? So they require tissues that would help them in conduction of food and water, and so vascular tissues are present in these plants, right? So again, we know that they are seedless plants, right? So these are again seedless. In fact, we've been talking about seedless plants only. Up till now, we've talked about the thallophytes, the bryophytes, and now the pteridophytes. They are cryptogams, which means they are seedless plants, right? And you must have observed how each group of plants, how they become more complicated and more advanced, right? From the algae, which are totally found on water, to the bryophytes, land and water both, to the pteridophytes, now totally on land, right? So that is the modification, we can say, that has taken place. We come to the habitat, right? So the habitat is that they are found in cool places, they are found in damp places, they are found in shady places, right? So they are found in cool, damp and shady places, right? So that dampness even they require, right? There are some which may flourish in the sandy soil conditions as well, not all, right? So I'll just write here, some may flourish in sandy soil conditions, not all. Majority is found to be living in cool places, damp places and shady places, right? Then their main, if you remember, when we talked about bryophytes, we said that their main plant body is a gametophyte, right? So gametophyte having haploid cells or n number of chromosomes, half the number of chromosomes, right? And this whole gametophyte, that is the main plant body, it bears the gametes also, right? In contrast to the bryophytes, the pteridophytes, they have their main plant body is a sporophyte, right? So main plant body is a sporophyte, right? So if we say that the main plant body is a sporophyte, of course bearing spore, the cells that are present are diploid. Diploid means having 2n number of chromosomes, full set of chromosomes, right? So that is their main plant body, and their plant body is well differentiated into true stems, true roots and true leaves, right? So plant body well differentiated into true roots, stems and leaves. In bryophytes, they are slightly lesser developed than the pteridophytes, right? So they did not have true roots, but they had root-like structures which were called rhizoids, right? So leaf-like structures and stem-like structures, but not the exact or the true stem, roots or leaves. But again here they have a pteridophytes, they have a well differentiated body, right, with true roots, true stems and true leaves, right? Now I said that the main plant body is a sporophyte. Now that doesn't mean that the gametophytic stage is absent, right? If you remember, we said about bryophytes that the sporophyte is a partial parasite on the gametophyte, right? Here we are saying that the main plant body is a sporophyte, right? So the gametophytic stage is also present, but the gametophyte is very small. It is multicellular but inconspicuous, right? And usually the gametophyte is independent, right? So we'll talk in detail about the gametophyte, but for now just let us understand the difference in the sporophyte and the gametophyte, the plant body of bryophytes and pteridophytes. So here we see that the gametophyte is present. It is small and inconspicuous. Gametophyte is small, right? So that is not the main plant body. Here the gametophyte is small and it is usually independent. At times it is found attached also, but usually they are independent. Now the sex organs that are present in the pteridophytes are multicellular and they are jacketed. A layer of jacket, right, is present. So the sex organs are multicellular and jacketed. Jacketed means they have a layer of, let's say, a cell that is present. This is the jacketed layer, and inside this is the structure, something like this, right? So that is the jacket, right? We will talk in detail about the gametophyte just now. Let's just go into the general characteristics. So the sex organs are multicellular and they are jacketed. Now the spores that are found are called meiospores. They are formed inside sporangia, right? So sporangia are certain structures inside which there are spores found, right? Now where are these sporangia located? These sporangia are associated with leaves, right? And the leaves that bear sporangia are called sporophyll. Now for example, if I just draw a leaf here, right? So if we look at the undersurface of the leaf in pteridophytes, we will find some powdery structures like this all over. Right. So what are these powdery structures? These are actually the sporangia. Right. Sporangia. These sporangia, they bear spores which undergo meiosis, right, reduction division. So they are meiospores, and the leaf that bears the sporangia are called sporophylls. Right, these are also referred to as fronds also, right? The leaves are also referred to as fronds, right? But if we are studying biology, so the correct name of a leaf that bears sporangia is a sporophyll, right? So we can say that sporophyll is a fertile leaf, right? Why a fertile leaf? Because it bears sporangia, which later on, when the spores are released and they find good environmental conditions, then they may grow into a sporophyte, right? So that is why the sporophyll is said to be a fertile leaf, right? So that's about the sporangia and the sporophylls, right? Then if we talk about the male gametes, right? The male gametes here are flagellate. That means they have flagella present, right? So we write that the male gamete has flagella. Well, flagella is present in the male gametes. Now, if flagella is present in the male gametes, that means they are motile, they are able to move, right? But for their movement, they also require water, right? So this is another, again here, they require medium, right? The male gametes, which are known as antherozoids, right? So in pteridophytes also, the male gametes are known as antherozoids, right? So they require water to swim and reach the mouth of the archegonium. Archegonia is the female sex organ, right? So to reach the archegonia, the antherozoids, they require water. So now since they require water, water is not available in all the places. That is why the habitat of the pteridophytes is also limited, right? So they also are found in restricted habitat. Why restricted habitat? Because they're found only in those habitats which have water present. Why water? Because they require water for the sexual reproduction to take place. How sexual reproduction? How is water important in that? Because the antherozoids or the male gametes, to reach the female gamete, they need to swim in water to reach that. In dry places, they are not able to reach, right? So that is why water is an important medium that they require. Now in bryophytes, we said that the embryo stage is absent, right? But here in the pteridophytes, the embryo stage is present, right? So what is the embryo stage? After the zygote is formed, in sexual reproduction, the zygote undergoes further cell division, right? That leads to the formation of embryo. So the embryo stage is present, right? So now there are different types of pteridophytes. Out of those, one group are the ferns, right? They belong to Pteropsida. So ferns are seen in the school also. We have a lot of ferns in the school just outside the old office where the potted plants are kept, or we can say just outside the senior staff room, right? So there we'll see there are some ferns over there, and these ferns, they have an underground stem, right? So their stem is found underground, and the underground stem is known as rhizome, right? So some of them, they have underground stem, and the underground stem is known as rhizome, right? So that's about the rhizomes, and of course the leaves that are present as I told you, they are called fronds, right? So fertile leaves bearing sporangia, they are called sporophylls, and meiosis occurs in the spores that are found on the sporophylls. What is meiosis? A reduction cell division in which, as a result of meiosis, 4 daughter cells are formed, and all the 4 daughter cells that are formed are haploid, right, containing half the number of chromosomes, right. Coming back to the gametophyte, right, we said that the gametophyte is small, the gametophyte is inconspicuous, right, inconspicuous, not very visible. We also said that the gametophyte is independent, usually independent, but not always, right. Now this gametophyte, what is the structure? When we said that we said that the main plant body in pteridophyte is a sporophyte, and the plant body is well differentiated into true stems, roots and leaves, right. That means the sporophyte is well differentiated into true stems, roots and leaves. What about the gametophyte? It is small, inconspicuous, and the body of the gametophyte is thalloid, right. So thalloid means it has thallus-like body. So the body is thalloid. So I'll just write here that the gametophyte is thalloid, having a thallus-like body. What is a thallus-like body? A thallus-like body is a body which is not differentiated. So when we are talking about differentiation in plants, what kind of differentiation? A plant body being differentiated into root, stems and leaves. So that kind of differentiation is not found in the gametophyte, right? So this thalloid gametophyte is known as prothallus. Prothallus, right? Now this term prothallus is a term that is used for free living gametophytes, right, and gametophyte bearing sex organs that develop a young sporophyte, right. That means on, let's say this is a thalloid body of a gametophyte, right. So these bear the sex organs, let's say these are the sex organs, right. Now these sex organs, they carry the gametes, right. Since it is a gametophyte, so it will carry gametes, right. What are the gametes? The gametes are egg and antherozoids, right. So these are the 2 gametes. So gametes are present here, and when these gametes, they fuse to form a zygote, and the zygote is 2N. Let's say here the male gamete and the female gamete, when they fuse, fertilization takes place, and that leads to the formation of zygote. Zygote is 2N, having the full set of chromosomes. They are not haploid, they do not contain half the number of chromosomes. They contain a full set of chromosomes, and this zygote further divides to form an embryo, which further grows into a sporophyte. Right? So that is a prothallus that leads to the formation of sporophyte, which is the main plant body, right? So as I told you, the male gametes, these are antherozoids, right? Antherozoids, and they are around, inside the antherozoid, there are around 32 to 45 sperm mother cells that are present, right? So inside these are sperm mother cells that are present. Now these sperm mother cells, they further undergo division, right? And they are flagellated also, right? So in the life cycle of a pteridophyte, we find alternation of generation, right? Alternation of generation, right? So what is this alternation of generation? We see that the dominant phase is the sporophyte, right? And this is further taken over by a inconspicuous gametophyte, right? So since there are two different stages, a sporophytic phase and a gametophytic phase, this is known as heteromorphic alternation of generation. Heteromorphic, hetero is different, morphology, right? So one stage is huge and big, the other stage is hallus-like and small. One stage huge, big, well differentiated, and the other stage is thallus-like, which is not well differentiated, right? So morphologically, the outward appearance is different, so it is heteromorphic, right? So this kind of alteration of generation is heteromorphic. Heteromorphic alternation of generation, right? So that's about the alternation of generation. And we also find more about the pteridophytes. We also find that the leaves, some of them may have small leaves and some may have large leaves, as in ferns, right? So those which have small leaves are known as microphylls, right? So let's talk about the leaves again. So those which bear small leaves, like Selaginella. Selaginella is an example of a pteridophyte. Selaginella. It bears small leaves. Now these small leaves are known as microphylls. Already the leaves are known as sporophylls. Now if that is small, then they are microphylls, right? And then in contrast to these, there are some which have bigger leaves, right? So fern is an example which bears big leaves, right? So the ones that bear big leaves are known as macrophylls, right? So that is the different term that is given to the leaves having which are different in size, right? So now sometimes what happens is, of course there are sporophylls, whether they are macrophylls or microphylls, they are sporophylls, right? And we know that sporophylls, they bear sporangia, and inside the sporangia are present spores. Now at times what happens is that these sporophylls, they may form distinct means visible, compact means all coming together, structures which are known as strobili or cones, right? So something like this, right? This is a cone, right, which bears the spores inside, right? So these are what? These are the sporophylls which have come together in a compact form, and they formed a structure which is known as a cone or a strobilus. Singular term is strobilus and plural is strobili, right? So what are sporangia? Sporangia are structures that bear spores which undergo meiosis to produce haploid cells which give rise to gametophyte, right? So these gametophyte, as I told you, they are small in structure, they are free living, they are photosynthetic as well, right? So now if they are photosynthetic, if the gametophytic stage is photosynthetic, that means they are able to carry out photosynthesis. And what are these gametophytic stages called in pteridophytes? They are known as prothallus, right? So even these gametophytes, they require cool, damp and shady places to grow, right? And their spread is limited, as I told you, because they require water, right? So we talked about the antherozoids, we talked about the egg cells and the fusion to form a zygote. The zygote further divides to form an embryo, which leads to the formation of sporophyte, which is the dominant phase, right? Now the spores that they bear may be identical or they may be non-identical. Now, if the spores are identical, they are known as homosporous, right? Now, if they are not identical, then they are known as heterosporous. Which, now what type of hetero means different, right? So there are two different spores. Now, if they are different, if they are heterosporous, then what kind of spores do they have? The larger spore, the spore that is larger in size is known as the megaspore or the female gametophyte, right? So the megaspore or the female gametophyte, and the smaller one is known as the microspore, right, or the male gametophyte, right? So that leads to the formation of these, right? The female gametophyte is retained in the sporophyte for a variable period of time, right? Remember, female gametophyte, although we said that the gametophytes, they are free living, but the female gametophyte, it may remain in the sporophyte for a variable period of time, right? And then if it remains inside the sporophyte, then we know that the development of the zygote into a young embryo, right? Embryo stage is present. So the development of the zygote into a young embryo, it takes place inside the gametophyte, which is on the sporophyte. Now, this kind of a habit is said to be a precursor. Precursor is a stage that is present before another important stage, right? So it is a precursor of seed habit, which is considered to be an important step of evolution. They are seedless. After this, the next group that we will study is, we'll study about the plants bearing seeds, right? So from where have they evolved? They have evolved from pteridophytes. How from pteridophytes? Because of this precursor habit of the formation of the gametophyte growing on the sporophyte, gametophyte bearing the zygote, and zygote growing into an embryo. This is a precursor of seed habit, right? So they also are the precursor of seed habit, right? So this is also what is seen, which is an important step for evolution, seen in the pteridophyte. And now we come to the last part, that is, we'll quickly go through the economic importance of these plants, right? Economic importance. So what is the economic importance of these plants? Right, so the first thing that we will study is that they are used as food, right? So the first importance is that they are used as food, right? So food for whom? Food for animals, right? And especially Marsalia, which is a water fern, right? It yields starch. It gives starch, right? That is cooked and eaten by certain tribals also, right? So it is a source of food for animals. Source of food for animals. Other than that, Marsalia, which is a water fern, right? This is rich in starch, right? So it yields starch, right? So when it is cooked, it gives starch, and it gives starch, and it is used as food by the tribals, right? So that is one way they are economically important. Other than that, the other importance is that they have a soil binding ability, right? So all the plants actually they bind the soil, right? So since they are found on the hills, hilly areas, hill slopes, so they bind the soil of the hilly regions or the slopes, right? Then they are used for scoring. Right, now what is the scoring? Scoring means cleaning of utensils, right? So equisetum, that is one pteridophyte, equisetum, right? This is one pteridophyte which is used as species. The stems of equisetum are used for even for polishing, right, of metals, right? So they are used basically for cleaning of utensils, and the stem of equisetum is used for polishing of metals, right? So that is how they are also economically important, and equisetum species are also known as scoring rushes because they are known for all cleansing purpose, right? Even polishing means cleansing something, right? Cleaning something, right? Then they are also good at nitrogen fixation, right? So they are also good. I'm writing it on the other side here. The fourth point is nitrogen fixation, right? So that is again one great importance. And azolla, I'm writing it here, azolla is again a water fern, and it has a symbiotic relationship with nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria, right? And then it, of course for nitrogen fixation it is used, and it is inoculated, put in paddy fields to function as a biofertilizer as well, right? Then these pteridophytes are also used as medicine, for medicinal purposes, right? Now how for medicinal use? They are used as anti-helmintic, right? Anti-helmintic means they are used to kill helminths, right? What are helminths? They are worms, right? Flatworms, flukes, etc. These are helminths, and they are used to kill these elements. So they have a medicinal value also. And Dryopteris is one example. Dryopteris is one example which is used as an anti-helmintic, right? And of course we have so many ferns in the school, and what does it, why are these grown, right? They're grown in the houses also, they are grown in, of course our schools have, and then many offices also may also have. Why are they grown? Because they add to the beauty of that area, right? So they are also ornamental. We grow flowering plants. Why do we have so many flowers and all in the garden? Simply because it gives beauty, it adds to the beauty. So that is why they are known as ornamental plants, right? So even these ferns are ornamental in nature, right? So these are also ornamental plants, right? Ornaments, when somebody wears ornaments, it adds to the beauty of that person. That is why ornaments are worn, right? So even these plants, they are grown for the delicate and beautiful leaves that they have. Many of the bouquets that are made, they use ferns. There are some ferns which look like a lace, beautiful lace, right? In Christian marriages, the brides, they carry a bouquet, right? And the bouquet that they carry, it has ferns also attached to this, and it hangs down as a tray, and it adds to the beauty, right? So that is why they're used as ornamental plants also. They are the ornamental plants. Why are they ornamental? Because of the beauty that they have in their leaves, the delicate leaves that they have. So that's about for this class, and of course do the assignments. You're doing it well, and we'll meet again and we'll talk about gymnosperms and angiosperms in our next class.